Okay, should we get going? I think, yeah, it's time. Hi everyone. My name is Johan Bergstrom, and I'm the track chair, session chair for this session. The session called Supporting Teaching and Learning. And we're going to listen to 3 presentations ranging from policy and standards to embedded systems. So it's quite wide. So we're going to start out with the first speaker, or speakers, 50% not in the room. It's on Unison, Cloud Framework for Teaching and Learning, and Bruce Moss from University of Wisconsin-Madison. And as soon as it gets in here, Amin Ghazi, here it is, perfect timing. Amin, you're up from Unison. Welcome.
Thanks, Johan. I'm Bruce Moss. I'm the Vice Provost for IT and Chief Information Officer at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Hi, my name is Amin Kazi, and I'm Executive Director of Unison.
I'm going to start out with the first part of the session, turn it over to Amin, and then I will finish up. We like to start out by talking about what Unison is, and so this is not on the slide. Unison is 2 things. Unison is a consortium of like-minded universities that have joined together to create an ecosystem for teaching and learning. And it is a set of software tools that we have acquired based on open standards that we are working to put together to be able to create an ecosystem that higher education controls. It's a relatively new development being formed a year ago. And we are here in particular because we are interested in talking with our European colleagues about the potential for joining in Unison and, if not joining, working with us as we develop standards. So the first thing I want to go over is EDUCAUSE is an organization in the United States devoted to support of IT and support of higher education. Just came out with a report in April, and you can Google it. It's called the Next Generation Digital Learning Environment. And in this report, they stated that the learning management system that we should be building towards, or framework, is going to be a mashup. It is not going to be a formal LMS. It is going to be based on open standards that allow the pieces to fit together like Lego blocks. And it is going to have a primary focus of learning analytics. We remind ourselves every single day why we're doing this. We are not doing this for the sake of technology. We are doing it for the sake of student success. And at this point, I'd like to mention the University of Wisconsin, to give you some context, is a university of 42,000 students. By various rankings, is ranked in the top 20 universities in the world based on research and academics. And we were a founder of Internet 2. And we also were one of the universities that didn't contribute towards scholarly publishing and where that developed. We were part of that group of universities that allowed the private sector to decide where is scholarly publishing going to go, and we allowed the private sector to decide our fate. And so what Unison is building on the success we had with Internet 2, where we controlled the networking ecosystem and have saved literally billions of dollars, not that dissimilar from Jant, to scholarly publishing, where our faculty pay to publish and then our faculty pay to consume what they have published, and we have no control over that ecosystem. So what is relevant is that Unison is our attempt to be more like what we did with Internet 2 and what you have done with Jant, and less like what we have all done by abdicating with scholarly publishing. So the common problems facing teaching and learning include runaway costs. A lot of this happens from vendor lock-in, isolated technology systems, and very high integration costs that are like the part of the iceberg below the water. We lack the capacity to share content based on the way our faculty want to share content, whether it's with one colleague or multiple colleagues with full access rights. And we have limited access to the data. The vendors that we have chosen largely decide when we get access to data, how we get access to data, and whether we pay for access to our own data. And we think this is a problem. So the question is, can we learn from our experiences to build the next generation teaching and learning? And who can impact student success while controlling the ecosystem? Here's where I would say that there's an opportunity for the United States and European campuses to really join together and think about how we can work together in a way that makes sense. For example, we have some interactions with UNIS and with JISC and Apereo and other organizations. Can we work together as we look to promote standards and move everything forward? With that, I'm going to turn the next phase over to Amin, and then I will finish up.
Hello. So I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about what Unison is doing and how we're moving forward. So like Bruce said, we're a teaching and learning ecosystem that when we talk about it, we think of three primary pillars. There's the content, the platform, and the analytics. So starting with the content, what we're trying to do with content is we are trying to provide an efficient way for instructional designers and faculty and students to be able to access all the learning objects that are out there. So all the institutions have various learning objects in various places. There's publisher content, there's open educational content. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it easy for as you're creating a course to be able to go in and discover this content from a single location. So what we're doing is we're actually creating something called a content relay, and the content relay is basically a search tool to go out and discover all these learning objects. And then the other part of the learning of the content relay is the deposit side. So we recognize that there's lots of faculty and others out there who are creating great learning objects, and there's no good way for them to share it without going to email or going to other routes. So what we want to do is we want to make it easy for faculty and institutions to be able to aggregate their own learning objects and share it with others. So I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything. So again, the content relay side is really about how we go out and we discover and we store our content, and then the repository is basically a database of these learning objects that Unison members can share with each other or across the entire consortium or beyond that even. So the platform we think of as anything that faculty and students might want to use in the classroom as they're trying to do this learning. So what we're starting with is a VLE. So we have Instructure Canvas as our LMS. We chose Canvas for various reasons, primarily because it's largely open source. It's very much a standards-based tool. It makes it easy for us to go in and modify it, interact with it, do whatever we want with it. So the platform is, so the LMS is the beginning of what we're doing, and beyond that, we recognize that there's an opportunity for various institutions to do their own thing. So if there is something at University of Wisconsin that they want to integrate with their LMS, it's easier to do that with a system that's open and standards-based rather than one that's very proprietary. So because our entire consortium is using a similar or identical platform, we can allow for things like sharing of courses between departments, for example, or we can have we can have easier collaboration. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate the need to have technology be a barrier to a lot of this sharing. And finally, there's analytics, and analytics means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To some people, it means reporting, which is not how I think of it, but reporting is obviously a part of this. So what we're trying to do with analytics is we're trying to provide data to our members in a way that makes it useful for them. So like Bruce was saying earlier, it's been difficult to get a lot of data out of these systems in an easy manner. So Unizen is working with our vendors. We're building our own, we're developing our own tools to help extract this data and present it to our members in a way that's standards-based and open. So when we think about analytics, there's actually two ways to think about it, and we're trying to attack it from both sides, which is a challenge, but it's how we decided to go. So there's one way to think of it is at the larger university level. So the university has questions about, is this program effective, or is this cohort being successful in their coursework? So we want to be able to provide this large macro at a university level data, and then theoretically, you can take data from all these different universities and you can share them across the entire consortium. And I know that in Europe, a lot of you already have these kinds of consortia that share data. In the United States, we're not as good about that. So in the United States, this is probably much more valuable than it is to some of you. And then the other part of this, when we talk about analytics, is more specific around an individual student. So how can we help individual students be successful in the classroom? So we look at things like early warning systems. We want to have data on what the student is doing as they're doing it, so we can help identify where they're struggling with topics and we can help them advance past that. So again, analytics, we're trying to get the data to our members and provide tools that let them look at the data both inside the classroom and across the entire university. And I think the other point I want to make is this third bullet on here is around real-time data. So in the academy, in higher education, real-time data has not really been, so in my experience, it's never been used for any kind of student analytics. And we think that this is an opportunity. We're at a point now where real-time data can really become effective and it can change the way people learn because of the increase of mobile devices, because of the increase in the number of students who are learning outside of the classroom. We think we really need to know what they're doing inside the LMS as they're doing it, because if they're, for example, taking a quiz and they're struggling with a topic, we want to be able to intervene with them as they're struggling with that topic, not 3 days later when they get their grade and they're just mad and they're going to go on anyway. So we think this real-time data is really going to change how we can help student success on individual campuses.
So this picture is something that we put together to give a sense of how we're viewing the entire ecosystem of organizations and individuals who are impacting this area. And so we have at the center Unizen universities, and we could actually have those arrows going both directions. But on the left side is what we call scale infrastructure. And there, Unizen is designed to provide scale digital infrastructure in support of teaching and learning, but so also is Internet 2 with the Net Plus service portfolio. And so we're not going to be replicating what Internet 2 has done. Instead, our universities build on that and use those services that are being done at scale. This scale can only be done because this is digital. Moving up, we have what I call angels, and those are the foundations that are helping us with some funding injections to be able to advance the state of teaching and learning. And so the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mellon Foundation, and the Sloan C consortium have been injecting a considerable amount of funds into our initiatives to advance the state of learning science in our country, and this is both K-12 and higher education, and so they are contributors. And in particular, we know that the Gates Foundation has expressed a lot of interest in what we're doing here. Experts and influencers, we could be, a lot of those are I apologize, their code names. I've reused this slide, but EDUCAUSE is the Organization for Higher Ed IT. ARL is the Association of Research Libraries. Libraries are very important here because they are the content experts, and we have involved them significantly in the design of our content relay. This is one of the first times that we've really brought the IT side and the library side together to collaborate, and that will continue. AAU is an association of major research universities in the United States. ACRO is for registrars and admissions staff. All of these organizations are important contributors, and we want them at the table and part of our conversation. And then we could add to this JISC, JANT, USISA, UNIS, any number of organizations that I think at some points are struggling with some of the issues that we are struggling with and making advances where we might be able to learn from what is going on. A good example is the work that is going on with regard to competency-based education in Europe. You are all ahead of us in this area, and I think it is critically important that as we move down this path and look at what is in the Unison ecosystem, we're going to need infrastructure that supports the competency-based education. And one of the first steps I believe we should take is to find out what has gone on in other parts of the world where you are ahead of us in those areas. So I see this actually, experts and influencers, as being international. And then with open standards, there are a couple of organizations we think are really, really important in this area. IMS Global is a standards-based organization. I'm on the board of directors of IMS Global. We think it's critically important that we become more international in our focus, and we are looking to be able to have more representation from European universities because IMS Global is starting to make substantial progress in the development of open standards. And then SOLAR, Society for Learning Analytics Research. My university was one of the founders of this. We very much want faculty as the engine, as the drivers of what we are going to be developing in standards with regard to learning analytics. So one of the individuals involved with SOLAR, you may have heard his name, is George Siemens. I think it's critically important that faculty like George are driving what the needs are of our faculty and our students, and then IMS Global as a standards organization can respond with open standards. This is a diagram we put together to be able to show the relationship, and I presented this at IMS Global, so you will see I made the gear for IMS Global a little bit bigger than the other ones. Unison, vendors, IMS Global all need to be working together seamlessly with Unison, and on the right-hand side is we have a cup that shows some of the standards. At the top are Caliper, and then we have something called Caliper Real-Time Analytics that's being developed that's going to be folded right into the Caliper's standard. And down below is TNCan, which is an Apereo standard that has a head start on in this area, and it is my hope, because University of Wisconsin is actively involved with Apereo, and I have one of my staff on the board. My hope is that Apereo and Caliper and IMS Global begin to work together and look towards developing one unified standard, and time will tell whether that happens. In going back to the left side, the vendor part is critically important. Unison is not anti-vendor. Unison is pro-vendor. We believe that the vendor community, the private sector, can respond with innovations faster than we can. However, and there's a big however here, they need to do it based on open standards. So what we're trying to do is to communicate what those standards are and have the private sector innovate around them. And if they choose some of the past behavior, which is locking us into their stack, they're going to find that Unison will not be embracing any of their products. So this is, again, some of the standards that we're looking to be adopting within Unison. The LTI is going to be a critical part of what we're doing. Our learning management system, Canvas, has been designed in a way that LTI is a critical component. My campus in particular has had 2 learning management systems, one from a vendor and one Moodle. And the reason we've had Moodle is because we have not been able to innovate with the proprietary learning management system that we've had. So we focused on both, one an innovation platform and one a production platform. What we're hoping to do is through the use of Canvas and its base on open standards, is we hope to use this both as production and as our innovation engine. This is just a diagram showing some of the defining standards for event capture and presenting measures, and I'm going to pass over that for right now for moving along. And in this slide I want to talk a little bit. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison, governance is very, very important. It is at present enshrined in state law. And we believe very strongly that our faculty and our staff and our students should be actively engaged in planning, not just advising, but helping us to plan as we move forward. And so at the top left is my box, the Vice Provost for IT. I am one of the sponsors of a set of governance committees that are designed to engage our campus. At the right side is one of my faculty colleagues, Steve Kramer, who's the Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning. Together, we're working with our campus IT committee, which is a shared governance committee. And down below, we formed 4 groups for Unison, a learning analytics group, a learning management system and digital tools group, a content sharing and open educational resources group, and then the final group is all students. These 4 groups have been formed, and we are starting to engage them now so that as we move forward as one of the 11 members of Unison at present, the voice of our students, our faculty, and staff can be brought to bear on the way that I, as a board member of Unison, represent the position of the University of Wisconsin. And again, in summary, I want to leave time for Q&A, and then I also want to add that at the end, after these sessions are over, Amin and I are going to be available over in the poster session area. So anyone wants to take a deeper dive with us afterwards, we'll stick around and exchange information with you and answer your questions. But again, what we want is improved environment for digital education. We want control over the ecosystem. We do not want this to be as it has been for scholarly publishing, where Elsevier largely decides what our price increases are year after year. Lower costs, therefore, for universities by pooling our resources. We have concluded that we have to share infrastructure costs with other universities. We can't afford to go it alone. Critically important to have standards. We are going to be completely dogmatic about open standards as we develop this. Think of this as a set of Lego blocks that we're putting together. We want to eliminate all the technical barriers for migrations, and we want to eliminate the barriers that come from private sector elements that are trying to keep us locked into their systems. And we want to be able to provide valuable real-time data that is not only for our faculty, but is for our students as well. We believe that our students should be taking an active part in their own education and in their own feedback loops so they can improve their own learning. That's the list of our current membership. When you look at those names, I'll give you a chance to look through it. You will see that largely those are what we call Big Ten Conference or CIC universities. We have worked together for 55 years. We have shared ideas on things that are in common across our universities. And we've added 3 other universities right now to the mix: Florida, Oregon State, and Colorado State. And in particular, all of them have strength areas in online education where they're a little more advanced than the Big Ten institutions. And together, we've reached what I would call critical mass. We have each contributed initial startup funding to be able to create Unison, and so we're now self-sufficient, and we're in a phase now where we want to grow, because if we get more members, we can continue to expand the services that are available for Unison. And with that, I'll have Amin come back up, and we will entertain questions. Yes, in the back.
My name is Ingrid, and I work for the Norwegian Research Network. I have two questions for you. And the first is, have you done anything with digital assessments? Is that part of the learning resources involved? And the second question is, you want to use open standards. And given the state of the standards, for example, TNC15 lacks support for student administrative information or institutional aspects, whereas the IMS standards are SOAP-based and everything third-party, or most of the third-party, at least the social applications you want to speak with, are RESTful. And fixing a standard takes at least 2 years.
Yeah.
What is the time frame you're envisaging for changing the world?
Okay. I'll deal with the first question, I believe is about assessment. Okay, so assessment is extremely critical to my university and to the other universities, and we actually are going through some parallel planning efforts and trying to get our own act together, to be really clear about it, so that we're on the same page as a university first before we engage. But I see that Unison has the potential, if these 11 universities can agree, and there is a link here to open standards with regard to assessment. To give you a sense of where we are, we're largely pencil and paper in terms of what we do with assessment. Very, very unacceptable at this point in time. And so we know we have a problem. The question will be whether this group of universities can work together to decide on a framework for assessment, and where we'd have to do some research on what's going on in the industry. And if so, Unison may actually proceed to make an acquisition and work with a partner. More likely in the early going is we'll need to look at and focus more on the standards component of this, so that we can work towards multiple vendors having the opportunity to be able to pass data. And at that point we don't have to worry about selecting one product. And the second question was on open standards and some of the pace that there is. So you hit the nail on the head. We've gone largely with IMS Global because Canvas did, and because, I'm on the board of directors, and so that does play a role. It's the best shot that I believe we have right now. We take the caliper standard, which was just released. Unison has actually gotten very close to developing a superset of caliper with complete communication with IMS Global about what we're doing, and we intend to launch that as part of our content relay. That superset will allow us to pass more data than what caliper can pass, and it is my hope then that IMS can decide which components it might want to use. It might turn out that what we've done may actually drive standard development and may move it in. And so we see this as a very positive way of accelerating the standards development, because we are highly motivated to make this work. And so in that sense, we need to get a little sense of pace The other thing is that I will say our colleagues in the private sector have been more active in IMS Global than we in higher education have been. And so higher ed needs to step up to the plate, and that will accelerate the pace of standards development, because we can't just leave it on the backs of our vendor colleagues to develop them.
Thank you. I think we actually are out of time, but I know Bruce and Amin will be available in the...
We'll be by the poster area.
Oh, so yeah, the
downstairs.
posters, exactly. So,
Thank you.
thank you. A round of applause. Okay, the second speaker today is Rafael Valle, and he's going to speak about Kakuria multimedia tool. Almost right.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the presentation, Johan. As you said, I'm going to be presenting, good afternoon, first of all. I will present the Kakuria multimedia tool. Teachers creating multimedia educational contents. It's a work developed by Federal University of Maranhão in Brazil in partnership with Brazilian Brain RNP. Do I have a... Okay, no problem. So first, a little introduction about learning objects. Willy defined it as any other entity, digital or not, that can be used, reused, or referenced during a learning or training process supported by computers. Basically, the main function of this object is to act as a teaching resource, supporting the teachers at the class. And we have some studies showing that learning objects are improving the quality of education. So first, I'm going to demonstrate, it's a simple example of learning object. This is Professor Carlos. He leads the project at the Federal University of Maranhão. No sound, please. Pode cortar o som, por favor? He is giving a class about sorting algorithms, and in a given point, you reframe the screen, and the student can have two options of classes that he can attend. First, he chooses the insert sort class, and then it will skip to the insert sort class with Professor Carlos. When this class stops, it comes back to the selection screen, and he can select another class. So it's a very simple example of a learning object. But how to program this object? The teachers can know how to do that. Elementary teachers we are talking about. So to come up with that problem, the group of Federal University of Maranhão came up with Kakuria multimedia tool. That's an authoring tool for that teachers can easily create this kind of objects. It's named after a cultural manifestation of Maranhão, sorry. And as you can see, the logo refers to the dancer skirts. And Kakuria multimedia tool is based in some key concepts. An object is composed by scenes, and each scene contains sort of medias that can be, for example, text, audio, video, and the medias are organized by a timeline. And each kind of media has a set of properties. For example, you can set properties for an image as width, height, and the position on the screen. And it also provides interactivity. We have basically two kinds of interactivity. We have the interactive links, as I showed here before in the example, when the user clicks a button, this is interactivity link. And we have the automatic links. When we finish one video and we start another, automatically it's a kind of automatic link. So the Kakuria multimedia tool has this interface. The part one is the menu view, where users can add any kind of media and pre-shaped forms, and also can publish the object to the internet. The part two is the scene view, where there are the scenes, and there the users can create the automatic links between the scenes. The part two is the part three, sorry, is the layout view, where the current scene is that the teacher is working at is playing. The part four is the time view, the timeline with the markers. We show the start markers, the set marker, the automatic link marker, and the stop marker. The part five is the properties view, where we can set the properties of any media that we are working at. And we also have the vision library that provides the layers of the project, the medias, and the library of a given scene. And now another demonstration now is the creation of that simple learning object that I showed before. So just open the application. First of all, you add a media to be the principal scene of the project, the first class with Professor Carlos. And then he will move the time ahead, so he provides the first interactivity. He will reframe the video, add some pre-shaped form, and he will add the buttons that are basically images, and then just define the time that he will show with some adjustments. Now adding the buttons, and after adding the buttons, he will create the interactive links for each button. These buttons will be connected to each scene that represents another class. So as you can see, when he stops the video and creates another scene, the tool shows a marker at the timeline also. Now he's working in scene 2. Is the insert sort class, and the scene 3 is the quick sort lesson. So he will make the links between the buttons and the other scenes in the property view, and our learning object is done. Now let's just make some tests. When he clicks, he goes to another video. And when he clicks in quick sort, he goes to another video. He can save this project. It will be an object that is supported by Kakuria Multimedia Tool, and he also can publish the object that we're going to generate an HTML5 file. So basically, this kind of publication is being running in our experimental phase that we are running at RNP, but we are now integrating the Kakuria tool to our video class service at RNP. Our video class service, it has already a lot of learning objects, but there are resourceful learning objects that need programmers, designers, and studios to make the videos. So we want to add this easy way to create learning objects to our service of video class. So basically, the teacher can use the authoring tool to create a learning object. He will upload to the video class service, and the students can access these video classes at any time from tablets, from computers, or from mobile cell phones. The tool was evaluated by 44 stakeholders, including teachers, distance learning specialists, and by some R&P collaborators. And the main goal is to verify if Kakuria tool have the potential to support teachers in the creation of the learning objects. It was used the quiz, the questionnaire for user interaction satisfaction. We select some questions of the quiz, and I'm not gonna to get into details in these graphics. Basically, when you see orange and blue predominance, we have good news. So they have a good general impression about Kakuria. The interface evaluation also was good. The system terminology information, we have to do some adjustments. They learn fast how to use Kakuria as well. And the system capacity was well rated as well, but there was one point that we have to implement, that there was no undo option, and that was terrible for the users. Before the final remarks, this is like code graphics and code information. Last month, we have a very happy news about the project. Maranhão is one of the poorest states in Brazil. I think it's the poorest. And Professor Carlos and his students went to a small town to work with some community professors from elementary school. And in one morning, they teach how to use the Kakuria authoring tool. And in the afternoon, the teachers went to the streets and started to make videos with their own cell phones and created some learning objects to present the students with really low resources. The teachers could make incredible learning objects, and it makes us very happy because we believe that is a tool that can empower the teachers in order to make a great work with low resources. So the tool is now available to selected beta users from Brazilian universities. We have 12 Brazilian universities working with Kakuria right now, testing and creating learning objects. The tests have shown that teachers can easily create learning objects. This was just a simple example, but they are building really cool stuff there. And the tool has reached its effectiveness, but today's group working in efficiency, increase the ease and the agility in the creation of learning objects. So I finished, I think, really early. I want to give you time for some questions and some comments on the work. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Really interesting and exciting tool. It's the kind of tool that I've been looking for a while. So,
Great.
I was interested in your example. You showed kind of a navigable video, so you could have a branching system of a video tutorial. But you also mentioned other learning objects, so it could be documents or quizzes or other things. Could you expand a little bit on the other alternatives other than video? What other things could be possible to produce?
We can basically we produce a HTML file and HTML file, and it's based on videos, but you can use any kind of media. I think it was that your question about?
Yeah, I mean, could you also, instead of just dropping in videos to link to, it could be a wiki page or another quiz or some other kind of interactive thing?
We cannot embed now outside pages, but you can construct quizzes with questions and insert some tests, but we are not linking with outside elements yet. Okay.
If I can ask just one question, do you have any plans, because right now you're using it only in Brazilian universities, yeah? Do you have any plans to maybe make it available to outside Brazil? And if so, would it be open source or would people have to pay for it? Thank you.
The tool is not translated yet. We have not this in our roadmap because we have no, basically we have no fundings for that yet. But it's all, it's open source. It's an open source tool. Sorry. And it's, the guys that programmed the tool, they made Red easy to translate. So basically we need collaborators to translate the tool or funding.
Any more questions?
I think.
Nope.
That's it.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, last speaker, Domenico Vicinanza. Is affiliated with Chant and Anglia Ruskin, that's right, university. And he's going to speak about creating interactive art with prototype boards and R&E networks, right? Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks for being here this afternoon. So my name is Domenico Vicinanza. I'm the main topic of this presentation is about creating art using embedded devices, cheap embedded devices in particular, and the role that network, in particular research and education networks connecting universities and schools can play in this. So I'll start giving a brief introduction about what embedded systems are, how they are related, how they're linked with art creation, with art production, and finally how network is adding something to this, and finally analyzing a couple of case studies and drawing conclusions. So the main actor, so the main protagonist in this presentation is not just like that. There are two examples of cheap prototyping boards. So there is an Arduino on the left and ARM embed on the right. So this is the kind of devices I'm talking about when I mean embedded processors or cheap development boards. So it's these kind of things. They are small, like they are tiny. They are pretty easy to get. They are quite cheap today. And the main reason why they are so popular, they are so important today in education and in the art, is because while up to a few years ago, it was really was really complex, was something for a few specialists to create a device, an electronic device that can be programmable and could deliver something, or some complex action with some complex computing. Now everybody with these devices can create complex electronic objects, so can program a microcontroller in their bedroom, basically. And while before that was really expensive, you need some really special tools and knowledge to do that. Now everybody can do that, and one of these things can cost just a few, probably. So the entry level is just 12 euros for one of these boards. So it's something really interesting for schools, for artists. So it had a huge impact in higher education, smooth learning curve, easy access to resources, easy way to create working prototypes, so having immediate satisfaction. And you can imagine, so this is not only affected the way education worked, but also the way art was created in museums. Art was used and was created by musicians, by visual artists, performers, and so on. So what is exactly an embedded device like this one? So what's inside? So this is a schematic of one of them. And basically, an embedded device is an electronic system that comprises three main things. The first one is a microprocessor, which is the black square at the center of the picture there. Then there are a set of input-output interfaces. So interfaces, so circuits that enable our microcontroller to talk to the world, like a USB, for example, port, or in this case, a serial communication ports, analog converter, and probably the most important things for us, an Ethernet port. So we can actually connect this to the world through the network, and we can connect things to this object, so that we can actually have this box to sense things, to measure things, to capture physical quantities in the space around us, and communicate through the network. So the first of these boxes that was designed appeared in 2005. It's called Arduino, and it was extremely popular. It's just an 8-bit RISC processor, 16 megahertz, and the main point of that was the fact that it was programmable using C++, using an open source IDE, so integrated development environment, and not some specialistic, really hard to remember and hard to learn assembler language. So that was a breakthrough. The hardware was open source, the development environment was open source, and that creates a revolution, a big change in the way these things could be used, and by not only by universities or students, but also by artists. And the final one, probably the latest one to join the series of processors and providers, is probably the ARM Embed. ARM is is the company making all the microprocessors that are in iPhones and most of the tablets and portable devices that we have, and they created a platform that was exactly for rapid prototyping. So it was a platform that was dedicated to universities, to higher education, and artists. The idea is you don't even need to download and install a programmer. The programmer is online. You just buy the tool, you connect to your laptop, and you can go online, you create an account, you code using C++, you download your binary ready for your microprocessor, you drag and drop the binary to your microprocessors, and it works. And that was, again, another big revolution. So students can actually take these boxes, can take them home from the university, can connect to their laptop, and they can program, they can create prototypes, and then create things that work. And in addition to that, we have also a set of new other things came out. For example, kits that are ready to use prototype boxes like this one appeared. This is the Arduino Explorer, so it's based on Arduino, but there are many of them now coming out. And as you can see, the idea is to provide something ready to use, ready to tinker and to play with, to students, to artists, and to people who are interested in creating electronics. So for example, in this one, it has, as you can see, it has a microphone, it has a photoresistor, it has an accelerometer, a temperature sensor, but also a joystick on the top left, buttons, a slider, it has an RGB LED, and so on. So it's a ready-to-use platform to create whatever we want. And just to give you an example about how simple it is to program these things. So this is the code, for example, to blink an LED. So it's really, it's C, basically. It's something really easy to program, easy to understand. So it's something that can be taught to a student in probably half an hour, giving immediately something they can use and they can modify and they can use for their own purposes. So that was the big revolution. Before, to do that, you have to write probably a couple of pages of assembly languages to do exactly the same thing. So that's for the embedded part. So, but why network? So we know that the network has the amazing capability of bringing things together. People together, experiences together, allow people to collaborate, exchange data, exchange experiences. But why? So what is adding here? Well, networking in the art can enable a whole range of new things. For example, creating or controlling art using sensors and using measurements that are coming from another place. We can measure the temperature in New York and can change the brightness of an LED in Lisbon in real time. We can measure the temperature in a chamber at LHC at CERN, and we can use that to control the pitch of a music instrument in another country. So this is the kind of thing a network can enable, and this is why artists are so connected to the concept of using the network for their own purposes. It's a natural extension of the possibility of creating interactivity, of bringing external elements inside their creation. So the possibility of sending data to the network and the fact that embedded devices can handle the network really well. And to give you an example, this is just, for example, what we can do, so what you can find on the ARM website if you look for the network in their cookbook. So there's plenty of things. So the availability of these systems plus the ease of using information and tools like that made a really big change in the way art was and is created and used. So using a device like the Embed, for example, you can create easily HTTP client, HTTP server, you can use Ethernet, you can control Twitter, you can use NTP clients, you can even write MySQL client just using that small box. And museums, for example, started to be excited about this, about the possibility of creating tools or creating miniature toolboxes that could actually be used by artists, for artists, to create a new way of designing art together. And for example, this is just an example. This is a remotely controlled four-wheeled graffiti machine that is using measurements from different places and using the network to bring these measurements to this card. And using Arduino, this is controlling a mechanic arm and creating this case graffiti. But this is just one of the examples. Lately, the Victoria and Albert Museums in London ran an entire session about hacking, electronic hacking, bringing together participants with no experience at all in electronics or in programming, and teaching them how to practically create electronic circuits and how to put together objects, and using network and electronics to create art. And this is just a few pictures from that. So there is a huge demand, and this is increasing. So more and more traditional museums, like Victoria and Albert, is quite a traditional museum, and they are extremely interested in doing these things. So, but let's have a look at how these things actually look like. So this is actually coming from my from my lab at Anglia Ruskin University, and this is exactly how it looks like a prototype board that the students can put together in half of afternoon. You can see the embedded microcontroller, the accelerometer, the ultrasound, so distance measurements, LCD, and you can see, more importantly, the network port on the top of the page. And what we can do with that? Well, we can measure acceleration, we can measure distance, and we can use the network to send this information. Well, how we actually use the network in this case? We need a protocol, we need a common way, a standard to exchange information in a meaningful way. So we normally, so one of the breakthrough again in this field was the introduction, was the creation of a protocol called Open Sound Control, OSC. Open Sound Control was firstly introduced to enable networked musical performances. So it was used to, instead of MIDI, to synchronize music instruments over the network. But actually it was general enough, it was powerful enough and lightweight enough to be used by actually many other kind of artists, like visual artists, like light designers, or like film directors to control cameras, for example. It's a lightweight and flexible enough protocol to be interesting for all kind of performing arts. And so Open Sound Control is widely used in this field. It's based on the UDP, and it is really simple to use and really simple to include in programs or in devices. This is just an example about using a programming language called Pure Data, which is a visual programming language, just to see how these OSC signals can be received, for example, just as standard UDP stream, and then they can be unpacked and processed. And what we can do with that, so just to give you an example about what we can create, I have here an example about a mini card that was equipped with an accelerometer and a microcontroller, an ARM microcontroller with the Wi-Fi interfaces. And what we did, we let this card go around, so outside our university, and we're receiving the OSC signals in our lab, and that was connected to our MIDI recorder, so you can actually record the oscillation of the card as a music signal. And this is just to give you an idea about how the things actually could sound like. So you actually have an idea about the journey of this card. So where the bigger was the actual oscillation of the card, the bigger is the music interval. And when you see something like that, you can imagine there was a pothole in the ground, so you can actually hear it, so in a quite effective way. So that's the idea. You can actually take something from a place like acceleration in the street, and you can actually turn it into, in this case, was music. You can actually use acceleration to change the color of a light settings, for example, in a theater. And if we want to have a little bit more complex use case, so in this case was creating again music, but using distributed sensors and involving a larger space, so involving two continents in this case. So the main starting point was a project by NYU called Citigram. So Citigram was a project that was awarded in 2011 the Google Research Award. It's based on a set of microcontrollers, exactly like the Arduino or like the Mbed, They are equipped with microphones, with sensors, a GSM card, and a GPS to localize exactly where they are. And they were scattered in New York City, so there are hundreds and hundreds of them. And there is a nice web interface where you can actually follow them. And in this case, you can see so this is Washington Square Park. You can see the dots are actually the active sensors. And the darker the dots, the more, so the louder is actually the sound captured by the sensor. So the sensor have microphones capturing the sound pressure level, so the noise level in that specific location. And the beauty of that is that the data are available for free. They are streamed. They are actually stored at NYU, and they are freely accessible. So everybody can have an account, and they can download data from each of the locations. So what I did was connecting my system to Citigram, and what I did was mapping sound energy or other physical parameters that were measured by the system to a music scale, so that the minimum maximum range that the sensor was measuring was mapped to the minimum and maximum range of my instrument keyboard or instrument extension. And I've chosen a linear mapping, so let's say a linearly growing sound pressure level, noise level was mapped to a linearly growing music interval. So this is completely arbitrary, so I can actually choose whatever I prefer. I can have an exponential mapping to highlight differences. I can use a mapping to different music scales. I can use pentatonic scales. I can use blues scales. So depending on what I really would like to hear, or depending on what I want to highlight. So recapping, I have my sensors in New York City. Sensors have a GSM card. They capture sound level and they upload their data to a big data repository, host and NYU. Data are taken from NYU using Internet 2 and Giant in this case. And what I could do was downloading the data and creating in real time a data sonification. So I can actually create music from sound, or actually from noise level in New York City. And that is the result. As you can see, I created 4 tracks. Each track was attached to one particular sensor in one specific location in New York City. So we have Times Square, we have Central Park, we have Brooklyn, and Rockefeller Center. So you can actually work as a musician. You can actually create your own orchestration. You can decide, that the Brooklyn noise is actually controlling my double bass. I can use a little bit of noise at Rockefeller Center to create, to control a vibraphone and so on. So you can actually think as an artist, taking information coming from the world around us. And just to give you an idea about 30 seconds about how this actually sounds like. So in this case, what I did was using a pentatonic scale just to make sure that everything was sounded nicely together. But again, there's a lot we can change, we can do. There's a lot of choice, and as an artist, we can work on different instruments, different orchestration, and so on. So what else we can do with that? So this is a nice example, but what else we can create with this? That's just the beginning. Well, what we can do by combining sensors, microcontrollers, and network is actually control or play instruments, synthesizer, drum machines. We can create distributed performances. Or in theater, we can actually control sound consoles. We can create video and images. Processing, an MIT free online tool to create videos and to create animation, can be controlled using OSC. So the same signal can be actually received by my music tool to create audio, but can be received by processing to create real-time visual images or visual animations using exactly the same signal. And we can create, or we can control in real time video, we can manipulate video on that. So, concluding, I think microcontrollers, sensors, and network together can show a great synergy for the arts. This is just the beginning, and there are so many things that can be done by using these things together and thinking and offering this to artists and actually teaching artists how to code and how to use these things. It's something brilliant, and we can allow remote collaboration, we can allow access to remote data and information, and we can use, I think that's the most fascinating thing, we can use information from other parts of the world to actually create art in a certain space. So, and for that reason, research and education networking, for their footprint and thanks to their quality, can be the national partners. We can couple that, for example, to high quality video, and we can have this as a part of a bigger interactive installation that, for example, museums can exchange or can work together with. And that's my last slide. I'm available until Thursday at the Jan booth if you like to follow up, if you like to know something more, listen to some examples, see something in action. So I'm more than happy to talk to you and to follow up with you. Thank you very much.
Any questions? You're just blown away about the possibilities. Yeah.
Yes.
So often in the sensors, are you envisioning that your sensors might also somehow be connected to measure latency or other kinds of key attributes, maybe connect it more into the perf sonar even networks to be thinking about, because music is one of those things that subtle latency issues can be, the ear can hear things that the eyes and other things don't see.
Thank you very much for the question. That's really, really interesting. Well, with these tools, what we can do, we can actually hear latency.
Right.
We can provide an immediate sonic feedback to latency in some way. What we can do, we can use these boxes as in. You don't need a computer, you don't need a laptop, you can use a server to create art with these things, or in this case, to measure physical quantities like latency. You can have two boxes sending data from one side, receiving on the other. And what we can do, we can actually use time stamping, and we can measure the latency, and we can actually create music intervals. We can map latency to music intervals so that we can actually see that if the notes are becoming far and far apart, our latency is increasing, for example. And we can use an exponential mapping so that we can actually really highlight when the latency is changing even a little bit. So there are many ways this can actually also help measurements. They can also help monitoring. Can be an audio feedback so that we don't have to stare at a screen. We can actually listen to measurements. Yes.
Anyone else? Yep.
This is a very interesting project. I was wondering, have you been able to measure the learning curve for someone with no experience at all at programming languages to create a sensor just like the one you showed?
We run workshop in the School of Music and music conservatoires actually, and in one day we managed to start from scratch. So we're working with musicians with music skills, but with no electronic or programming skills. And we actually teaching in slightly more than half a day the technique. So how to put together sensors, how to connect things, and how to program. And then we could leave them working 3 hours on their own projects. And we were able to run a concert in the evening. So starting, let's say, 9 a.m. in the morning, we had an entire concert program for the evening, and we had people actually listening, say, you know, these things did not exist yesterday. So this is brand new things, and was created in just a few hours today. So it works. So it was an experiment, and actually that proves that there is a lot we can actually do. And musicians or people working with art, they are much faster in certain part of the process, like orchestrating, choosing the scale, choosing the mapping, know exactly what they need and exactly how the instruments can work together. So that part is really quick. So once they got the grip of on the actual censoring part and programming, everything was extremely fast.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that concludes the fun part of the session. I have some announcements to make. Demonstrations are available downstairs every break, tomorrow as well. And poster sessions at the afternoon break. So make sure you take the opportunity to look at those. There are also extra events this afternoon that you could check out and see what might be of your interest. And feedback, of course. Please comment on the sessions, the event itself, as often as you can, as many time as you want. And perhaps most importantly, the gala dinner, there are still tickets available for those who want additional ones. And I think there was an email just a few minutes ago about how to get there. There are shuttle buses. I don't have the exact information, but it's in the email. Okay? Have a good night.